All right, here we go. I hope you have your lecture notes ready and your pencil so that we can get right into this. So this is our first focus question. The two focus questions are on page 205, and we're going to jump right in and answer those. The first one is, how did Greece put into action the new confidence that they had gained in defeating the Persians? Obviously, this question is referring to after the Persian War, and the answer is by restoring their cities. The Greeks started rebuilding their cities and making them strong and beautiful again and trying to restore the glory of ancient Greece. Second question is, what are the consequences of the Peloponnesian War for Greece? Get your pencil ready because you're going to want to take note of this. First of all, Sparta took control of Greece for 30 years. Sparta took control of Greece for 30 years. Like in any war, many people died, buildings were ruined, farmlands were destroyed, and the city-states were weakened. So we have many people dying, we have buildings being destroyed, farmland being destroyed, and city-states being weakened. And finally, possibly the most important consequence of the Peloponnesian War is that Athens lost its democracy. No longer was Athens a democracy. It had to adopt Sparta's oligarchy because Sparta won. All right, here we go. The Persian War. Go ahead and take a moment. Write the Persian War on your paper. This is our new heading. The Persian War happened in the 5th century BC, which is about 400 years before Christ. That happened between the years of 490 and 479 BC. Remember, you can take a look at the timeline, and we're going backwards. The numbers are getting smaller because we're getting closer to the time of Christ's birth. So 490 would be further away from where we are today, and 479 would be a little bit closer. The Persian War lasted about 10 years. And Persia's goal was to conquer Greece and to make it part of Persia. The Persian Empire was growing very large and very powerful. This is the same empire that is talked about in the Bible. Daniel was part of the Persian Empire. So it's mentioned in the book of Daniel. And the Persians were jealous about the growth of Greece and its power, and they wanted to take Greece over. So the first major battle that your book talks about is at Marathon. And the Athenians were the ones who won the Battle of Marathon. If you remember back a couple weeks ago, we talked about the Battle of Marathon and how it was 26.2 miles away from the city of Athens. And after the battle was won, one of the soldiers ran back to the city, delivered the news that the Athenians had won the battle, and collapsed dead. So that was the first battle, the Battle of Marathon. The next major battle was at Thermopylae, and this was a major defeat for the Greeks. So the Greeks lost the Battle of Thermopylae. And the most important sea battle was at Salamis. If you look at your map on page 205, you can see that there are lots of little red and green ships or purple and green ships that represent the Greeks and the Persians. And as you can see, there are a lot less green Greek ships than there are purple Persian ships. So this battle was significant because there were only about 40 Greek ships and over 200 Persian ships. But the Persian ships were large, and they didn't move around in the water very well. And the Greek ships were small and fast, and they were able to go in between all the Persian ships. And the Greeks ended up, surprisingly, winning this battle. So the final outcome of this 10-year-long war was that, yay, the Greeks won. And after the war was over, the Greeks were very confident because they felt like they had beaten a much stronger, more powerful enemy in the Persians. So we've already talked about this a couple times. Persia's goal in the Persian Wars was conquer Greece and add it to the Persian Empire. Persia wanted to make its own empire bigger, but they didn't. The Greeks won. Now let's take a look on the purple page on page 206. We have two things we need to talk about on this page. The first one is the Acropolis. This is something that you're going to want to make sure that you take note of. So what is the Acropolis? It's a hill in Athens that overlooks the city and is the center of religious life. The Acropolis. A hill in Athens that overlooks the city and is the center of religious life. The Acropolis, say it one more time, is a hill in Athens that overlooks the city and is the center of religious life. Make sure you take note of that. Well, there's the answer. Who was the most famous leader of the Athenian democracy? And that was Pericles. Another name that you're going to need to make sure you know. So Pericles was the most famous leader of the Athenian democracy. He was known for his speeches, his wisdom, and his reasoning ability. He did many things to encourage people to participate in democracy. And he even paid people to be involved in the democracy, wanting them to serve in the assembly and serve on juries. So during the time that Pericles was the leader of Athens, he helped Athens to grow and improve, and he built up the democracy, and he built up the Acropolis, and he grew manufacturing and trade, and he built up the army. Which leads us to the next thing you need to write down, the Peloponnesian War. So after the Persian War, Athens starts building up its army and building up its navy and creating something called the Delian League. And this league was to protect Athens and its trading from another attack like the Persians had completed against the Greeks. Athens had probably suffered the most during the Persian War because they had their city burned and they suffered a lot during the war. So with the Delian League, all of the city-states that were part of the Delian League agreed to pay money in order to work together to provide for protection. And Athens ended up being the dominant city-state in that league. They had control over the Aegean Sea, they raised taxes, they were the ones who controlled the army and navy, and they controlled the money. They were the ones where all of the money from the league got stored in Athens. And eventually they got the people to pay them to control the money. So Athens is getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And eventually they start forcing other city-states to join their league. But naturally, there's one city-state that doesn't want to join the league. And who would that be? But, you guessed it, Sparta. So Sparta starts creating their own league. Basically, the Spartans say, well, if Athens is going to create a league, we're going to create our own league. And Sparta's league was called the Peloponnesian League. And as the Peloponnesian League started to grow, they started to have some more conflict with the people of Athens. Finally, war broke out in 431 BC. As you can see by the heading on the slide, it was called the Peloponnesian War.